And then like when you get these boom markets, like in 2021, being like in a dev firm, you start hearing all these pitches like Facebook for dogs, or like people like drinking beer,
Sure.
like sending beer selfies to their friends, like, oh, it needs to be an app. And
Right. Absolutely. Well, I mean, that too, I think brings up the other point of how important it is to validate the idea before building it.
Cash flow? Cash flow? Did you clear your cash flow?
Thanks for coming on the Cash Flow Pod. Really interested to dive into your business. You started EVA in college, originally booking bands literally in Nashville, which sounds super awesome. I'd love to go to some of your shows, but
Yeah.
you've evolved it all these years. Now it's a corporate booking platform to using technology to match entertainers with businesses that are looking to entertain their employees or host events or whatever. I'd love to learn more about that and like what that transition from, like hanging out at the bar with friends and booking bands to like corporate entertainment platform. How does that all come about?
Yeah. So my co-founder Channing and I went to Belmont in Nashville, which is a pretty small music school. A lot of musicians and songwriters attend that school. And so we were just surrounded by really talented artists and musicians trying to get performance experience and just get started. And we really believed in them, and they had definitely what it takes. And we've even seen some of them like really blow up since that time.
Any
But
bands I would know?
lots of country folks like Devin Dawson was someone we booked early on in college. Ian
Nice. I don't even
Munsick.
know country, and I've heard that name.
Nice. Yeah. Ian Munsick was like getting really big now too. He was like in our year at college. Um, yeah. And so it's really cool to see kind of the growth of all these artists that we were literally booking for. Oh, actually, my favorite, who I didn't mention, Jake Wesley Rogers, is awesome. We booked him when he was like just getting started, and now he's opening for Kesha this year. So
Oh wow.
he's pretty cool, yeah. Um, but the problem in Nashville and lots of other music towns where there's tons of musicians is it's hard to make a lot of money performing live because there are so many musicians, and especially when they're just getting started, they're willing to play for free or really cheap, and it kind of drives the price down for musicians. Like a bar, if they know they can get Joe for $200 for 5 hours, like why would they pay Sandy $1,000? It's like, and they're all really good. That's the thing. Like everybody's super talented, so it's hard to make money in performing. So we really just wanted to see those artists get paid for their time, and so what we started doing is just reaching out to bars and restaurants and small venues and getting their kind of like slowest nights, Mondays and Tuesdays usually, and just said, hey, can we bring the bands, and we'll even promote it and get people to come, but you'll give us a cut kind of thing. Or if it is like a ticketed event at a park, we'll just ask the park if we can have an event there, sell tickets, give them the majority of that money, and start to see those entertainers getting paid.
That's so cool. You must have been like the fun person to hang out with in college.
It was fun. I mean, everybody, it was a really cool time because in that school, like everyone was really motivated and ambitious to go and like start things and try things within music. So I feel like a lot of people were kind of working on their own projects or businesses. It was like a really like collaborative kind of school, and it was really fun for that reason.
That's awesome. So we got to like the point where you're booking bands, you're hosting all these events. I saw on your LinkedIn you started EVA a year before you graduated college, so you had like overlap at that point. But like, at what point were you like? When was the flip? When was like the switch flipped to this is a business and we're gonna like go make money doing this? Besides just like throwing parties on, for our friends and stuff.
Yeah, it was probably, we got into an accelerator program in 2015, in Nashville called Project Music, and it was the first music tech accelerator in the country. And we were thinking of technology we wanted to build alongside of like booking and promoting events, and had not really been able to build it, didn't have any money or any experience building technology. So kind of always had this idea of how we wanted to incorporate technology. And a piece of the accelerator was some funding to like build your product. So getting into that, it was kind of like a really short MBA, honestly. Like really, we learned a lot about the music industry, got different connections to agencies and management companies of artists, and really learned how it works. And then they really kind of prepped us to learn how to fundraise, how to build an MVP. And that's kind of where we got our feet wet and realizing, okay, like we have a business model now. We actually know what our pricing is going to look like. Like that was definitely a big shift to know that we can kind of keep doing this potentially full time when we graduate, and make money doing it.
That's so cool. There's two types of entrepreneurs that come on this podcast. There's like, like who most of my friends are, like who I am, like a tech nerd that's just like in search of a business problem to solve with tech. And then there's the entrepreneurs who like understand a problem and then they just arrive at tech as being the best solution to attack the problem, but know nothing about tech. Whereas like, me and my friends are like, know nothing about the business problem we're trying to solve half the time.
Yep.
I think like the
partners in that.
Yeah, like the real magic happens when you connect the two people together and like they have a good synergy and a bond going. But what was it like? I've been a tech person my whole life. So what's it like coming into tech as a non-tech person trying to figure out how to use tech to solve a business problem?
Man, we really learned everything the hard way, I will say. Working with developers, outsourcing, overseas, in-house, like we used contractors. We kind of worked with every different type of level of developer you can imagine at first, because we didn't know anything about, we didn't code, and we didn't even know like how to vet developers, or even how to explain what it is that we wanted to build. Like I really wish I could restart, honestly, go back. I'm sure we would have saved a lot of time and money knowing what we know now, but you got to learn to do
Part
it.
of the journey to get,
Absolutely.
make the mistakes.
But I would say, we now have an in-house tech team, and I really have become kind of the product manager in knowing what to prioritize, getting user feedback, how long things are going to take to build. So I've learned a lot from like, when we first started and not knowing anything, but really what kind of helped us get there is, of course, learning from our mistakes, but also surrounding ourselves with people, mentors that we could really trust, and just get them to literally even just say, recommend a good dev shop to us that we can trust, that isn't going to, waste a ton of money. And also like working with good product managers back then too. Because I think the very first mistake we made was just explaining like the entire vision of the whole product, years of what would have taken development time, when like they don't know what to do with that. We needed to be way more clear, way more precise, like really get in the weeds, which I now know. But we were painting this big picture of this product that we wanted, that some things we still don't even have, like 7 years later. So I really needed to get a lot more granular. That's kind of a tool that I now know when you're talking to developers and people that are actually building the product.
Yeah, and it's so I think I told you I'm the CEO of a software dev firm. We're like 70, 80, whatever people.
Yeah. Awesome.
The mistakes that I see made when a client has a product they're looking to build is, if they immediately go to like the offshore route, which a lot of people do through like Upwork, it's like a lot of people have bad experiences with that, and they just jump to blaming it on the offshore team or the offshore person. Sure. Which is often, like, sometimes it could be the case. Maybe that person was incompetent, but often it's not the case. And what they're missing is product management and product ownership in the middle. Right. You can't expect, like, if you go and you like hire someone that's like a worker that does like carpentry and say like build a house, like they're like there's
Right.
no architect who's going to tell them what to build. They're just going to start
Right.
nailing wood together.
Exactly.
If and then if people that go to straight to dev firms or agencies, often when those projects fail, what I've seen, what's often missing is product ownership. So the dev firm has product managers, and they can prioritize backlog, and they can work with the engineering team and architect a good solution. So the software might not have a technical problem in it, but like the client, as you said, might just like shove the whole vision out, and then just not really understand like how to test it and validate things in the market. And so you don't necessarily have a technology failure, but you have a product market fit failure because you didn't roll out the right things at the right time with the right validation on your hypotheses.
Exactly. And there's so, especially in our industry, events and entertainment, there's so many nuances that just like even just a regular marketplace company, there are those weird things that not everyone's going to know unless you've had years of experience booking entertainment for private events. Not most people don't. So those things too, I would often forget to explain, and kind of I always find now that when we're bringing anybody else in, I do take the time to like really explain how the business works, how the industry works, why it's kind of like weird that we're automating this booking process, and our customers, it's kind of new for them. It's really important to like determine the longevity of like what the business will become as well.
Yeah, and it's like software is interesting. Like if people who don't understand software that go into it for the first time oftentimes have like a few years of like hard knocks learning to figure it out, because like a mature software platform could have tens, hundreds of thousands, or even millions of decisions that need to be made to complete that product.
Right.
And like some are like minor and have like almost no bearing on the results, and some that like seem like they could be small might have like very large impact on the future and the outcome of the product.
Right.
And yeah, it's like so complex. Maybe not as complex as like a brain surgeon's work might be, but it's it's a very complex job to do.
More complex than I think people think when you have an idea for an app, for an example. Like I think a lot of people just think like, oh, this is an app, I would use it, this is how I would use it, boom, let's go and make it. And there are so many decisions, like you said. It's not just like there are thousands of pages, even every little action, there's so much thought behind everything that it's really hard to think through when you don't have that experience.
Yeah, I see it all the time. And then like when you get these boom markets, like in 2021, being like in a dev firm, you start hearing all these pitches like Facebook for dogs, or like people like drinking beer, like sending beer selfies to their friends, like, oh, it needs to be an app. And
Right. Absolutely. Well, I mean, that too, I think brings up the other point of how important it is to validate the idea before building it. I mean,
great segue into that.
that was like, well, that's like, those are my two like biggest mistakes of business, is like not knowing nothing about tech before building a product, and not taking the time to even vet who is your customer. Is it not just you and your 5 friends? Are people really going to pay money for this? So I feel like they do kind of go hand in hand.
I'd love to hear your thoughts on that more, like especially the second one. I think we kind of touched on the tech understanding one, which I actually don't think it's necessarily a mistake to not understand tech going into tech, because I think a lot of really good successful entrepreneurs, just to kind of put a bow and put a bookend on that one. I think a lot of successful entrepreneurs that don't understand tech succeed because they know something about a very specific niche that tech people don't know about. So it hasn't been like stomped all over by everyone and their mom from Silicon Valley.
Right. Totally.
So all right, back to the validating validating ideas. I'd love to hear your thought process on that.
Yeah. So, I mean, what Channing and I did when we first started, I mean, our very first business, well, it was not even a business at that point. Like kind of what we were doing before the booking part of this, what is now EVA, is our idea was a website that would recommend events and concerts to you based on your music preferences. So like what now you might do in apps and websites like this exist now. but like maybe you'd plug in your Spotify, and even Spotify has it like itself. Like, hey, you listen to all these artists, their concerts are coming up.
Wow, you really pivoted to where
Yeah,
you are today.
big time, because that was like our initial idea, because that was something we wanted. And we didn't, think to ask anybody else if they would want it. We just started building that website. We didn't really get that far. It was basically a homepage. Like, that's about as far as we ever got on that product. But to promote this website, we would put on events, and in turn, like, we're already putting on events to just help our friends get paid. And then we would, like, that company, which was ours, would sponsor these events. I mean, it was just us doing all of it, so we would just put the name on it. But where we were actually making money is people were buying tickets to go to the events that we were promoting. No one was ever going to the website, and I don't think anyone even knew that that was like what we were going for, is to build that kind of product. So we really pivoted and realized, like, the live aspect of music is where we should focus.
It's so interesting how you got to where you are today. I'm sure there's a lot more twists and turns. One quick thing on that. Are you familiar with the mom test?
I don't think so, no.
So it's a book called The Mom Test, and basically it's like I don't know if it's like the Bible for product managers, but it's like, if there's like one of like 10 books that all product managers talk about, that's like maybe one of the 10.
Okay.
It's basically, like, just to summarize the Mom Test, it says that, like, subconsciously in the human psyche, like, people don't want to, like, be disrespectful or let other people down. So if you frame your questioning around like a product strategy to potential customers around like, would you buy my product, they're most likely going to like try to justify in their mind a way that they would say yes, so they don't disappoint you. But if it's like, if you go to your mom and say like, hey mom, would you if I record some music, would you buy my CD, kind of thing, like, she's gonna be like, yeah, of course I'm gonna buy your CD. Like, it's the same concept. So you want to frame things in a way like as if you're talking to your mom, and like she's, so that she wouldn't just automatically say yes because it's you. Like, figure out how to frame tests in a way that human psychological principle doesn't kick in.
Sure.
And like, one way I've seen it done, I was actually just talking to a startup yesterday about this, is like building landing pages with fake checkouts, and like literally seeing, or you could have a real checkout and just refund people, but like literally see if people spend dollars. Like, if they actually spend money, then that's pretty much the best way to validate if something's real. Like, getting yeses isn't, if getting a yes is like plus 1 point, then like getting a credit card and a checkout is like plus 100 points.
Mm-hmm. That makes sense. Yeah, totally. I love that. Yeah. And I think I hadn't heard of that specifically, but we do something similar when we roll out new features or want to get feedback of how to improve our current platform. And we'll pretty much just either give somebody, like when we were first starting, like MVP, it's barely a functioning product. We would just watch people use it and see if they used it the way we hoped they did and thought that they should.
Like, literally standing over their shoulder, or did you use like tech or something to watch it?
At that point, we literally got like 10 people in a room and would just like filter them out every 20 minutes and let them like said, hey, book an artist. Like, that's all we would say, and see if they could do it. Like, like the user experience was easy enough and made enough sense for them to go through that process. And if it wasn't obvious, then, we didn't build it right. Like, we wanted to make it very clear that that's the direction we're wanting you to go.
I keep hearing this thread talking to you that like you say you're like not coming from a tech background, you're not a tech person, but like the way you approach product is like very much like a scrappy, get it done, we're going to succeed, we're going to push through it no matter what. And that I love that trait in entrepreneurs. That's like such an awesome quality.
I thank you. I appreciate that. But that part is just so fun. Like, I find that the most fun part of all of my work is in engaging with the product and seeing how other people use it, and how often I make assumptions on how they're going to use it and I'm wrong. Like, even being wrong, it's still really fun to kind of see, oh my gosh, of course they're thinking of using it this way. Like, sometimes like it's easy to get so in the weeds, and like, I know every possible way you could use this product. So of course I know how to use it correctly, or how I've defined it as correctly, you know, but someone who's never known anything about our business and has never been on this page before is going to have a different experience.
So I keep like distracting the story. You're like on the story arc of how you got to what
No,
EVA
me
is
too.
today. There's all these like interesting nooks and crannies to explore in the story along the way. So I keep like taking us off, but let's go back. So you're like standing over people's shoulders, like checking the user experience. So like, and then I think we left off that the website, the consumer like concert matching or concert recommendation engine, no one used the website, but people were going to the shows. So essentially you're like a show promoter at that point. How did you like, what was the next pivot from there?
Yeah, and even some more context around like who our customer was at that point. It was, our very first customer was like fraternity and sorority parties looking for bands. And so any kind of students on campuses who are like putting on parties, because that's what we did in our college. So we were like, I'm sure other people in the South are going to want to find really cool bands and DJs for their parties. And we can make that process of finding and booking them really easy. So that was kind of like, once we were in this accelerator, had done tons of like put on our own events hundreds of times. You know, some people had kind of approached us and like friends of friends, or we would help do it for our friends on other college campuses. That's kind of what made us start to think like, oh, there's maybe a market like us of people who want to book entertainment for their events. As well as I'm sure it could be easier because every time we're booking something with the artist, it's the same information that's being exchanged. So can that be automated? Like they always need to know that the venue needs to know this information, the artist needs to know this information, what they're getting paid, when they need to show up, like how long they're playing. So can it be automated? Because it's fairly consistent at that level. So kind of like we were growing in the Southeast on campuses alone. Literally, we would go to like University of Alabama, and Channing and I would like knock on the door of a frat house and ask to talk to their social chair and see if they just wanted to book a band for their next party. And did that like throughout our senior year. And then kind of had some people, you know, booking, and that was like our very first customer base.
But you've kind of gotten out, like from what I understand, correct me if I'm wrong, like EVA's more like a very niche specific kind of like Upwork, where it's a two-sided marketplace, and then, you know, the artists or the entertainers come on and like manage their profile, and then the buyers come on and like submit either requests to you, or they just go on and directly browse the directory and kind of like, it's like a marketplace that connects the two, like the buyer and the seller of the services. Is that right?
Exactly. Yep, that's
Okay.
right. They're the kind of based on how much the event planner knows about what they're looking for, they can either find that specific entertainer, request them only for their event, and provide the details of like what the event is, or more often than not, they want to see what's available at what price. And so they'll build an event. This is a time, date, location, what kind of music or speakers or comedy I'm looking for. And we match it to entertainers that meet that criteria. And if they're available and want to play, they'll respond with a quote.
Cool. And then do you have like, is it like, are you like the middleman that handles the transaction and like escrows the money or something? Or how does the transaction work?
Yeah, pretty much. We're like the automated middleman. Like they're fully interacting on the platform. They sign the contract, they pay online, and they can find that entertainment, and then it's fully booked through our platform.
I love that though. I mean, that's how you get like maximum leverage in the business, because you've gone from like a people intensive, operations intensive business to like literally you're a tech platform now, which is the ultimate way to get leverage.
Yeah, that's the goal. It's still, it still does take some time for a lot of now that we've transitioned to corporate events, it does take some time to really gain their trust and get them to fully use the platform. But the folks that we've got that have been like recurring customers for years just get on there, do it, and they're rocking.
Love it. Yeah, that's cool. I mean, is it like pretty much like corporate event planners of like large enterprise type businesses, or do you kind of have like, you know, more like, do you have like also some sort of like freelancer or small individual planner type people using it as well?
Yeah, it depends. It's really more like what is their budget for entertainment? Like we've done 15 people events and 15,000 people events
Oh,
kind of.
wow.
So like big conferences, maybe booking a speaker or maybe a sales retreat for a company or a company holiday party and they want a DJ. So like the kind of size and type of corporate event varies. And the customer, we do have like 3, 4 different customer types, which can be make it kind of hard to market sometimes, but it's either like an in-house planner if it's a really big company, or they would hire a event planning company to like put on their event. And those are kind of our best customers because they're constantly doing events and they can just use us for entertainment.
Yeah, like the two-sided marketplace businesses can be like pretty hard to scale them because you need to like manage demand on both sides equally at the same time, or try to keep it equal as best as
Exactly.
possible.
Yes.
What did you find? Like, what was harder? Was it getting the companies and the buyers, or was it finding like the talent that's in demand enough to make? Because like the platform's only as good as the quality of the talent, and I guess the price per, you know, the price and the value that you get out of that talent.
Yeah.
So, which was harder?
In the beginning, since just, starting with like 15 bands as our supply, it was hard to build that up fairly quickly for the demand we had. But pretty quickly it switched to the demand side, the event planners. That's for sure the hardest now. Once we got somewhat of a base, like where we have enough entertainment options, then it's like, all right, we're shifting all of our focus to getting more demand, but we kind of have to start over in every city that we launch in. So we always start with the supply side, get a decent roster of entertainment before marketing or spending too much money like trying to get that demand. But yeah, now it's pretty consistently like the entertainment side, the demand side is harder.
I think you mentioned that you guys went like into a virtual model too during COVID, and pivoted into that. Like, did that last, or was that just temporary for like the 2020, 2021 time period? And now it's like back to business as usual.
I mean, for us, it's pretty much back to business as usual. We maybe did like 3 virtual events last year in 2022. We haven't done any this year. And I think a lot of companies started in COVID as like a virtual event platform. Hopin is a huge virtual event company that raised like they were valued at billions of dollars during that
Yeah,
time.
that one's. I would be like really stressed if I was the CEO of Hopin right now.
Yeah, exactly. But at the time, they were like gold because that's all you could do. And they, amongst many others, were really painting this picture that virtual is here to stay. People will want to keep doing virtual events, because you don't have to travel. It is cheaper. You can still kind of engage online. But I think in my experience, it's been pretty clear that people are happy to go to conferences and like still want to travel and be in person. I think it's changed a bit as far as maybe how often they do it
Yeah.
or how much money they spend. It's changed a bit, but I mean, like the biggest conferences are fully back, like just as big as they were
Yeah, I
before.
don't want to sit. I don't want to sit for 8 hours on Zoom doing a conference all day. That's just overkill. I'm
Yeah,
curious. I'm going to check out Hopin
exactly.
and see what their website says they're doing these days, because they have to be pivoting. Like, what's?
I would agree. I haven't looked either, but I'm curious because that was like the one we would say, oh well, this company to investors at that time we'd say, well, they're valued at how like 7 billion or however much it was at that point. So we'd be like, yeah, we're in the same space, so we're cool too.
Yeah, they're pivoting. It says create community experiences with Hopin, a suite of audience engagement tools, including StreamYard, Session, Streamable, Project C. So it looks like they're kind of becoming like a virtual community platform.
Yeah, that makes sense.
like integrating a bunch of existing stuff. But yeah, I mean, this is a huge pivot. And like pivoting, like the way you pivoted, smart, pivot early before you've raised, at unicorn valuations and have, 500 employees to try to like pivot with. But pivoting at this stage is very, very, very challenging. Not that I can say I have experience doing that, but still a very challenging endeavor to undertake.
I know, I don't envy them. I mean, it felt like it felt very hard for us to pivot to virtual. We were 4 people at that time, and that felt tough. So I cannot imagine like a legit unicorn-sized company, like you said. I mean, that's going to be tricky, but hey, good luck.
I want to take a quick break from the episode and say, if you're enjoying this content, the best way you can say thank you is to subscribe. So if you're on YouTube, hit the subscribe button and the notification bell. And if you're on one of the podcast platforms, hit the subscribe button there as well. And also share it out to your friends and colleagues. If you find this content useful and you think other people will enjoy it as well, please send it out. And back to the episode. So we were chatting last time. You were saying one of the things you're really passionate about is like women entrepreneurs and, helping women get into entrepreneurship. And we were chatting about that a little bit. I'm like really curious to hear more about that because I think we only touched on it for 30 minutes or so, or maybe 15 minutes when we were talking. And like, I've been doing this podcast for, 8 months, 9 months. You're the second female guest I've had on. It's like, it's difficult to find, good quality entrepreneurs that are women to be able to come on and talk about, stuff that's interesting. I think, it's just like largely like entrepreneurship is largely male dominated. And, we were chatting a little bit about how, just kind of like cultural and societal influences for like young girls kind of might be part of the impact, but I'm curious what else has come to your mind around that?
Yeah, I think it is changing. And I think, the more and more young entrepreneurs I meet, I do think it's getting closer to be. I mean, I don't think it's that close to half and half, honestly, quite yet, but I'm seeing a lot more female entrepreneurs getting started than I think there were maybe say 10 years ago. I think in general, women are probably just less risky, and it's probably a good thing, to be honest. I mean, most businesses fail, most startups don't succeed, so they're probably kind of thinking it through before jumping into it. Like maybe I think men might be more willing to just take that chance and like figure it out later when they might want to create a whole plan and actually see that this thing might work. And if there are questions, they might not jump right into it and launch the business without knowing, what is this going to look like in 3 years from now? Like when am I going to become profitable? Kind of answering those questions, which not a bad thing. I don't think it's, I think it's good to think things through, obviously. And I think for us, my co-founder and I, both females, I feel like we kind of had a more even playing field since we started in college. We just didn't know anything. So like we didn't have to pay ourselves for the first like 2 years of business since we were so young. So we were not thinking that far ahead, probably like a lot of men that might start in their 30s a business, like who are kind of willing and confident to just take that risk. And
I do think that's a good thing, like not thinking too far ahead and just like not over analyzing. It's like the more like academically you approach it, the less likely you're going to actually do it. I think that's a true statement.
Well, yeah, absolutely. And I mean, we change our plans still very regularly. Like if I set out that, hey, we want to have this feature launched in a year from now, say something really big, say it's an app, something that isn't just a small thing. I mean, that has happened. We haven't launched it yet. Like things just keep changing. So it's hard to predict like what the business is going to look like, how our pricing is going to be, who our customers are going to be. It's hard to think that far ahead a lot of times when you're just
when there's going to be a pandemic.
Yeah, right. Like no one called that. So who's to say?
Oh man. So that's interesting. You said the risk adverse thing. Is that like biological, or do you think that's societal, or both? Or because I've thought about it before. Like I always come to the conclusion that like what seems to resonate with me the most is that, because I've talked to my wife about this too. She's had she's doing some entrepreneurial stuff now, and she's, you know, had companies in the past and worked for companies and kind of seen both sides of it. And you know, she's talked about how like when women are young girls, like they're basically kind of like, I guess, subliminally or whatever, like we're all subliminally taught things by society, both boys and girls. But I think like the messages that women get subliminally versus the messages that, like, I guess the messages that young girls get subliminally versus the messages that young boys get subliminally might be what kind of like ripples out, you know, decades later into what might make the ingredients for an entrepreneur more likely to happen.
Yeah, maybe that could be it. I also think, you know, women don't have the same kind of access to those resources when you're first getting started. You know, certainly we all know it's a lot harder for females to raise investment. Like it just looks a lot different. But
Did
I
you
think
raise for EVA?
we raised 150K right after we graduated to kind of build the product. And we've raised little by little. We've raised almost about 2 million total. And then we're raising like a $2.5 million round now.
I'm curious, did you raise from like professional investors, or was it more like high net worth or angels or?
Yeah, it's been a little bit of everybody at this point. The very first was a like angel fund that gave us that very first check. And then we've had individual angels, we've had VCs, strategic kind of investors. So have worked with everybody since then.
You don't have to call anybody out unless you want to. I always like a good controversy, but I'm curious, like, did you experience that sort of like, I don't know if like, what's the right word, like prejudice or whatever, or, you know, did you experience that like friction of like being a female trying to raise capital for a business?
Looking back, I can say yes. I think in the moment it didn't feel like it. And I think even until maybe the past like 2 years, I really felt truly that I was viewed as equal and we had like the same opportunities, because it, you know, it wasn't blatant, like they were just like, oh, women, you know, like it wasn't so obvious to me. But now looking back and seeing other things that I've seen now, I can absolutely say it is different, because it's really hard for me to form a relationship with an investor where we're like buddies, you know. I'm like, well, now that I've seen friends who are males and they're investors, even like regardless of the age difference, even because a lot of times, you know, say there's like 30-year-old male investor, 40, or I mean founder, excuse me, say a 50-year-old male investor, like they can still get along and go get dinner and go get drinks and kind of like hang out. And that's how they usually like bond and build that relationship to want to work together in that way. And it's just kind of like, it's different for women, you know. It's like, it's weird. Like if I'm, especially when we were way younger, when we were raising, when we were like 22, like I'm not going to go out to dinner with like a 50-year-old man as like a 22-year-old woman. And like, you know, we did, and we would, and it would be like very professional, but like, we're not going to get to know each other on a like human level. Like it's going to be very much like a pitch, and we're not going to like connect just because it's weird, you know? And like, we also just, we're always kind of thinking like, and some guys are creepy, honestly, like they would want to like talk to us and like have go and like connect it over a meal or whatever it may be. And then we find out like they were never going to invest. They just like want to talk to a 22-year-old girl, you know. It's kind of like, there is that. I wouldn't say the majority of people are that way. There's definitely like bad intentions out there, but it's more of just like my best friends, regardless of work, are not 60-year-old men, you know, like that's like not going to be my friend that I hang out with on a Friday night as a young woman. Whereas it was a man, like they can, and it is, and they can like call on each other for other stuff, and they can really kind of like bond and like get closer than I probably ever really could, to where it's like, where's kind of the line, you know?
That is I've never heard it explained like that. And that is like the clearest and like most resonating way I've ever heard it explained. Like the experience, like I can totally 100% understand and like not necessarily relate firsthand, but I can like understand what you're saying and like have empathy and like appreciate that situation because yeah, like I have a lot of friends in business that are most investors, like most executives, as we're talking about, founders, entrepreneurs, are mostly men, and a lot of them are older than us. Like a lot of them are in their 40s and 50s, especially the investors that are able to dole out serious cash. Like they're going to be in their 40s and 50s most likely. There's some younger firms, but but like I have a lot of friends that are men that are a lot older than me that are like people that are like people that have helped lift me up in my career, people that have helped create connections for me. And like, I do have that kind of like buddy relationship where we'll go out and grab a drink or like connect on, kind of like a man-to-man bonding thing, which is a great thing. Like, I think man-to-man bonding is really important, and, for men, to have that. But it totally makes sense why, like there's like a narrative sometimes that like men are in power and they don't want to give up power to women. And there's like that narrative that I've never really been able to like relate with. I'm sure there's like elements of that happen from like a misogynistic or from like what do you call it? Like a malicious intent perspective. Like I'm sure there's some people out there that have that, but I don't think most people have that. And I think it just so happens that most of these types of investment organizations are powered by men, and like naturally men will have the advantage being able to connect and relate to men than women have. And that's like, yeah, that's it's like, yeah, you're changing my perspective a little bit right now. Like you're offering setting a new light on a new way to like appreciate this situation for me.
Yeah, it's so interesting because I mean, this is like a new revelation for me within the past year. Like I can think of that dinner where that light bulb kind of went off, because it was an investor that Channing and I, my co-founder, we were trying to get money from, and also somebody that he currently was a different company, male founder, that he was currently invested in. And it was like a fairly kind of casual dinner. We weren't like hard pitching. We did have like a pitch earlier that day. We were in New York, so we were like in town spending time together to see if this was going to work. And I just like in the way that they were talking to one another, the potential investor, and the current portfolio company of his. And he brought the guy because we were kind of in similar spaces. So he was like, oh, you guys should connect, you might be able to work together. So that was why he was there. But I was like, that was the light bulb that went off when I just saw the way they were just talking about other stuff. They were like, their wives were friends, and they were like, oh yeah, we both love this sports team, and like we both like had experience in all of these industries years prior. And like it was just, I like realized, I was like, oh, I will never like be able to be that close with you. Yes, there's a bit of an age difference, like, but it's just not natural, like, and we have investors that, who have been the most respectful, the best. Like I even think of a few, like some I even kind of have like an uncle kind of relationship. Like we are really close, totally trust them. It's a great relationship. But it took years and years to now get there. I mean, like I'm thinking our very, very first investor 6-7 years ago, like now, since we've been kind of at this for so long, like we're now that close, and I could like call and talk about stuff. But I mean, like, we're not going to go on vacation together, like there's still that like path that we'll never cross that I think men probably could.
Yeah, interesting. Totally shedding new light on it. And I really, like you're coming at this from a very just like real perspective of like analyzing the situation for what it is. And I think like, I have this where if something's, I think a lot of like just humans have this thing where like if something's like not going in your favor, like you write stories in your head about like what could be happening, about like how somebody could be trying to have a transgression towards you or something, or like you like we create these stories. Like I create stories in my head sometimes, and in this case, like you're not creating a story in your head necessarily. It to me, it doesn't sound like it sounds like you're really just like seeing the situation for what it is.
Yeah.
Really interesting. And it's like I'm thinking as you're talking about it, like I'm thinking like obviously Elizabeth Holmes has been in the news a lot lately for the she I guess she just went off to start her prison term, but like she totally changed herself. Like she totally like changed her voice and changed the way that she acted and behaved and did all these things to like deal with what you're talking about, I think.
Yeah. Yeah, it's kind of wild. I do think women in those positions of like pitching and looking for money or partnerships, whatever it may be, when the majority of the time a man is across the table, we do just have to think a little bit more about things and like how we're going to be perceived, whereas men probably don't have to take those extra steps.
Yeah, interesting. That was I appreciate it, Makenzie. That's an awesome
Totally.
awesome perspective you just gave me. So the other thing we were talking about too, I don't know if I introduced you to this concept or if it was just like a new way to think about it, but like the concept of like masculine and feminine energy. And just
Sure.
for like the listeners, I'll just like summarize it. So it doesn't necessarily like it's not one to one, like masculine doesn't mean man and feminine doesn't mean woman. Like we all have some percentage ratio of masculine and feminine in us. Some people might be actually 100% masculine or 100% feminine, but I think those extremes are extremely rare.
Yeah.
And like I'm in like this kind of like I'm in like a group that's like focused on uh how to like do the best you can at being in a relationship and like bringing your best self into your relationship. And like there's this concept in that world where like every relationship, like a romantic relationship, needs an equal amount of masculine and feminine, regardless of like you could have two 50-50 people, or you could have a 75-25 and a 25-75 person, but it needs to like the two forces need to balance themselves out for there not to be
Yeah.
like a clashing going on. But so that's like this concept of masculine and feminine. Just to give some examples, like business is a very masculine thing. It's like it's doing energy. It's like kind of like warrior energy. It's like a very masculine type energy.
Yep.
Playing music, that's a very feminine type of energy. Like you're flowing, like you're feeling the emotions of the song that you're performing. You're like getting into like you're moving your body and you're like moving your soul to move other people's bodies and other people's souls. Like that's a very feminine energy to be in. I'm a musician, so I I'm a singer. I sing in a metal band.
Nice.
Too actually. I have an Alice in Chains tribute band and then a 80s
Oh, hell
metal
yeah.
band.
Love it.
But like I can definitely feel like I can be working and I'm in CEO mode. I'm in like masculine go mode, and then like if I have like a gig with my bands at the end of a day after I worked, I'll have to like take the time to transition out of that like go business mode into like getting in touch with being able to connect with like the emotional side of myself to be able to perform well and to be able to get into the zone of being able to sing effectively,
Yeah.
to be able to get the crowd going and get the crowd
Yeah.
excited about it. So but like we're talking about this whole like female entrepreneurship, and obviously it's like it's totally it's totally common for men to have feminine energy to some degree and for women to have masculine energy to some degree. But
Yep.
for whatever reason, whether it's biological, whether it's societal, women tend to lean a little bit more towards feminine energy and men tend to lean a little bit towards masculine energy. So I
Sure.
wonder, like I've talked with a lot of people about this, both men and women, and I wonder like how much that plays into like that masculine, like business is 100% a masculine thing. So masculine energy environment. So I wonder like how much that plays into it as well.
Yeah, I think it is. It is definitely, business is definitely a masculine thing. And I think, I mean, when I think about it, my co-founder and I definitely do have more of that masculine energy than feminine. And I think our partners kind of like, her husband is a musician and my boyfriend, I think I could see those similarities where they have feminine energy too, that kind of like we balance each other out in that way. And I think honestly, like it's really interesting to learn about this like as a partner. Like I would love to like really think about more of myself and my boyfriend, like how we actually are. Like I had a we did a tarot card reading once, and the guy even said that. He was like, "Oh, me have way more, you are like have the masculine energy, Justin, you have more of the feminine energy going on here." Like he told us that. And I was like, yeah, I could see it. So I do think you're right. And like, it does have to be a balance in a romantic partnership.
Just real quick, I'll throw out some books for like you or any of the listeners that want to check them out. Some favorites for me. Allison Armstrong has a few. She has like a lecture that is recorded on Audible, and then she has a few books. Very much great content about this subject. And then another one is David Data. Has a few books about it, mostly written for men, but he does have, I think, one or two books written for women, and like men or women can read either one. But David Data, I think it's spelled Deida or something like that, or the I or the E might be switched, but those are two great authors on this subject.
Very cool. Yeah, no, it's very interesting to think about, how you engage with other people too. Like, I think, I don't want to say all, like you do, I think, have to separate like a man from masculine energy and a woman from feminine energy. Like, I do think it's best to like not think of it as that way. But I mean, I think like a very masculine energy, which I definitely have in this way, is like not talking about your feelings and emotions or getting too emotional, like pushing it away, like not really letting yourself feel sad or mad or too much and just kind of moving on quickly. I know I do that for sure. And it's not a great thing. I'm working on it and don't want to be that way. But I think naturally, like things like that can kind of make up your kind of the levels of your masculine versus feminine energy.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's totally true. That's the masculine energy that just like moves on, doesn't think about the hard emotions, and just keeps going, like the warrior side. And like, for a man to connect to his emotions, you need to be like going into a feminine state, which like I've done both. Like I'd say I definitely lean more towards masculine. Like my wife and I talk about this stuff, like what we're talking about, like her and I talk about this like really like deeply. Like we'll have really like long and sometimes intellectual, sometimes emotional conversations about this kind of stuff. But like if she's working really hard or if like something like throws her into a super hyper masculine state, it's like probably like it's gonna be hard for us to connect. Like we might be able to talk about some interesting conversations about like business things or like intellectual things, but there's no way we're going to connect because I don't go into like for a romantic perspective, I won't go into a feminine state, and then like so it'll be like there's no way we're going to connect. So like she'll like have to go into her feminine state for us to connect emotionally and romantically.
That makes a lot of
or
sense.
Intimately might be the better word, but sorry, yeah. I cut you off.
No, I can think of examples in my life where I've not been able to connect with someone, probably because of that. Like I'm just like shutting it off, or I'm not like willing to like go deep and open up because I'm just like not tuning into that side of the energy. So I can see it makes a lot of sense, and that you have to just be aware of that, and that you can kind of go either one.
This is such a cool episode. I love how we're like skating, between like
Lots of
personal
stuff.
stuff and like, psychological stuff and like we keep tying it back to business. This is so cool.
Yeah. Oh, it's great.
Uh, so I don't want to like steer way too far off of, your company and what you're doing. So like, is there anything else, like what's in the future for you guys? Like, is there anything you guys are working on that's really interesting coming up with EVA?
Yeah, so we really want to keep growing. We want to launch in a lot more markets. So really planning what those launches look like. The next 3 cities we're going to launch in are Atlanta, New Orleans, and Charlotte. Really trying to kind of round out the Southeast before going to either coast. And the strategy behind that is changing a lot, I will say. I think before it was just like, get as much supply as possible, get a couple customers, and we're launched. Like, go, just make it happen. And we're skipping a lot of steps. So now we're being a little more methodical about what that actually looks like, what relationships we're going to need to make in those cities, what order of things need to be done instead of just trying to do them all at once. And so we're taking our time and trying to go about even the marketing and press side a little bit better as well. I think we've kind of just like bulldozed our way into the cities we're in now and just said, hey, we're launched. And, we did go probably too fast, honestly. So I want to do that a little bit better this year. And so growth is always a thing. And then, I'm always excited about the technology, what's growing there. We do want to develop like an API where other companies that have the same customers as us, say maybe hotels or like different types of vendors for corporate events, they can also give their customers access to book entertainment through their website. So, maybe we made a partnership with Marriott and they host plenty of corporate events and host people traveling for business. Maybe some of their customers would want to book entertainment for those conferences and those events, like through their, they get a discount or through their platform that they already have. So we're thinking about different types of partnerships like that we can make to hopefully access a lot more people. And yeah,
It's an advantage too. Like having, you can't just roll out your platform to the whole country and run Google ads. Like you have to really like strategically go into new markets and like, that's a moat, I think. Like by the time you do saturate, all the major cities and you're, on both coasts and you've got, the majority of the population within your market or inside your market areas, you'll be pretty well like you'll have a good moat to be able to make it hard for other people to come in and take up those markets.
Yep.
It's almost kind of like the Facebook strategy, how they initially, they did it at universities, but similar kind of growth strategy there.
Yes, I would agree. And it's definitely not easy when we also have like the service aspect. Like we're automating a process, but the delivery of what you're getting is a service. Like, so a human is going to show up and perform for you. So you're right, like that we couldn't just roll out and do Google ads, and like we actually have to have the supply in every market that we're in too. So lots of extra kind of layers with our business.
Are there adjacent markets you can go into with your product? Like, is there like when you tap out, all the major cities, is there like a new switch you can flip to like go into something else or expand the TAM, expand the total addressable market?
Yeah, I think it's gonna be, there's 2 paths right now, and we have to pick one probably pretty soon. We're just still figuring out what is the best route. It's either we stick in corporate events and we can automate everything for a corporate event, the travel, the hotel, the catering, all the things that you would need to book for corporate events. Like we can automate that and have everything in one place. That's option 1. Or option 2, we stick in entertainment and we go outside of just corporate. So we can automate the booking of festivals and regular tours and concerts or book signings of authors, like all kinds of things where an entertainer or performer, speaker any type of influencers too, like any type of person that makes content is booking themselves or their agent is doing it on their behalf can use our technology. That would be option 2.
Nice. What do you think about people that want to do ticketing on blockchain?
I mean, keep trying. I would love if there were other options. Like, I'm definitely not touching that, but like, I do think ticketing needs to be disrupted as it is today.
Yeah, you've got like what, Ticketmaster and Live Nation are like the 2 big dogs.
Right. And of course, I mean, they're not incentivized to change. Like, why would they? You know, they're making all the money. They can charge whatever they want.
Yeah,
So,
when you buy a ticket, like I buy concert tickets, and the ticket's like $50, and it's like $90. By the time I get done with fees and all that, like, where does it really cost that much to operate that business? And do you have to like charge a markup that high? Makes no sense to me.
it's crazy. I'm sure they don't need to make that much, but they can. So,
Or they're just super inefficient. Like some companies just like, because they can make that much, they just like find a way to be inefficient and just have a lot of people, and they probably could do the same thing with like half or a quarter of the amount of resources. I don't know.
So true. So true. I mean, so many businesses, even like what we were talking about with Hopin, like, because they raise the money, because they have the money, they have the staff. It's like, I'm all about being lean and profitable if you can do it better.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, that's a good, I think we're at a good wrapping point. Makenzie, we went through like so many different twists and turns, just like your business did to get to where it is today.
Yeah.
We did that here in this podcast episode. Anything you want to close on before we hop out?
Man, I mean, thank you so much for having me. Happy to chat with anybody who would be interested in talking, or if you ever need entertainment for your event, you can visit bookwitheva.com. And you can find me on Instagram. Makenzie Stokel is my name. So those are probably my 2 plugs.
Awesome. Well, thanks for coming on.
Thank you.
Cash flow? Did you clear your cash flow?